Good morning, boys and girls. It's me, Mrs. Kokenauer. I have a new book to share with you. As we've been talking about, February is Black History Month, and I've got a great book to share with you today about that. The title of it is Two Friends, Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. The author is Dean Robbins. The illustrators are Sean Qualls and Selena Alco. Two Friends, Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. This is a book that is considered a literary nonfiction book. It is based on a real event in history with real people, but is written as a story. So it is considered a literary nonfiction book. The author is Dean Robbins. The illustrators are Sean Qualls and Selena Alco. Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass were actual people. Susan B. Anthony is famous for her work with women's rights, trying to get women the right to vote back in the 1800s, before women were allowed to vote. Frederick Douglass is famous for his work for civil rights for African Americans. When they were still slaves, he fought and worked and spoke and wrote about why African Americans should be free and also have civil rights and the right to vote. Snow fell in Rochester, New York. A horse pulled a creaky buggy down Madison Street. Susan B. Anthony set out 2 saucers, 2 cups, and 2 slices of cake. Frederick Douglass arrived for tea. Susan lit 2 candles on the table. The friends sat by the fireplace in Susan's parlor. Now, the setting of this story, as we've seen, is in Rochester, New York. And this is in the 1800s. Now, it was very unusual for a white woman to invite a black man to eat with her at her house, to have tea with her at her house. But she knew, Susan B. Anthony knew, that there was no difference between white people and African Americans, and she wanted them to have equal rights, just as she wanted women to have equal rights. Back then, neither women nor African Americans did have equal rights. Frederick wore a gentleman's jacket, vest, and tie. Susan wore a kind of pants called bloomers. She liked them better than the heavy dresses women were supposed to wear. Those dresses made it hard to get things done. And Susan had many things to do. Now, back then, women usually wore dresses. It was very unusual for a woman to wear pants, and they didn't even call them pants. They called them bloomers. I can't imagine not being able to wear my jeans. Do you notice these illustrations have writing on them? These are actual pictures of speeches written by Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony that are used in the illustrations. As a girl, Susan wanted to learn what boys learned, but teachers wouldn't let her. Girls didn't need to know about important subjects, people said. They should grow up to raise children, and that's all. Susan's mother couldn't vote or own a house or go to college. Few women could. I think Susan saw that as very unfair. Susan wanted something more. She read about rights in the United States, the right to live free, the right to vote. Some people had rights, while others had none. Why shouldn't she have them too? And here's a voting booth, a voting line, and do you see who's voting? It's all men. it's all white men. No women could vote back then, nor African Americans. Susan taught herself to give speeches. Some people liked her ideas about rights for women. Others didn't. Outrageous, this man is yelling. But a lot of people listened to her speeches. The candles glowed in the parlor. Frederick sipped his tea. Susan asked him about his newspaper. He filled it with his own ideas about rights. Everyone is talking about my new issue, he said. Truth is of no color. Frederick grew up as a slave in the South. Slaves had to do everything the master said. But Frederick wanted something more. He secretly learned to read and write. New ideas thrilled him. And back when Frederick Douglass was a slave, it was against the law to teach an African American, a slave, how to read and write. But he learned anyway. He taught himself. Frederick read about rights in the United States. The right to live free, the right to vote. Some people had rights, while others had none. Why shouldn't he have them too? That's just what Susan B. Anthony was thinking too. And they are about the same age. They were thinking this about the same time. We the people, that's the beginning of the United States Constitution. Frederick Douglass believed that those rights in the Constitution applied to African Americans as well, and he was right, and to women. Frederick escaped from his master and headed north. He taught himself to give speeches, just like Susan B. Anthony did. Some people liked his ideas about rights for African Americans. Others didn't. But lots of people listened to him. Black people and white people listened to him and read his newspaper. Susan liked Frederick's ideas, and he liked hers. He moved to Rochester and got in touch with her. They promised to help each other, so one day all people could have rights, women and African Americans together, and people who moved from other countries like Mexico and Guatemala, Honduras. None of these people had rights until friends like Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass helped fight for all people. The fire crackled. Snow fell outside the window. Frederick and Susan ate their cake and talked about their plans. They are good friends, aren't they? Friends who want to help each other are really good friends. She wanted to help him with his plans. He wanted to help her with her plans. So many speeches to give, so many articles to write, so many minds to change. Do you think people in the government, people who made the laws, changed their mind the first time they heard Susan B. Anthony or Frederick Douglass speak? No, it took many, many years and lots of people working together to change people's minds. But it was a start, a very good start. They would get right to work as soon as they finished their tea. This book imagines what it was like when Frederick Douglass met Susan B. Anthony at her house to talk about ideas. The two became friends in Rochester, New York in the mid-1800s. At that time, slavery was legal in the United States, and so was discrimination against women. Anthony worked hard for women's rights, as did Douglas for African American rights. They made themselves into two of our greatest champions of freedom. Anthony and Douglas both challenged unfair laws. Douglas escaped from slavery and also sheltered other runaway slaves in his house as part of the Underground Railroad. Anthony voted in the 1872 election even though she knew the police would arrest her for it. The two of them bravely spoke out for each other's causes, making appearances together throughout their lives. They never stopped fighting, and they never doubted that victory would come. Failure is impossible, Susan said. Anthony and Douglas won their battles. The United States ended slavery in 1865 and gave women the right to vote in 1920. Today, in Rochester, where they used to live, a statue shows the two friends having tea. And here is a picture of what they looked like. Susan B. Anthony, she was born in 1820 and died in 1906. And Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 and died in 1895. So they were just 2 years apart in age, and they were good friends and worked together. Now, during this February Black History Month, I've tried to encourage many of you to make a biography bottle about somebody you learned about and write to me about what you learned about them and why they were so important to our history. Frederick Douglass would be a great bottle to make. So would Susan B. Anthony. If you would like to take the AR test on this book, this is the number for you to take. You would just go to class link and click on the Renaissance Place button to take a quiz. Thank you for hearing our story today.